It's been more than a decade since Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 vanished without a trace, taking 239 souls with it and leaving behind one of the greatest mysteries of modern aviation. No mayday call, no wreckage, just silence. For years, the world clung to vague satellite pings and searched in all the wrong places, spending over $200 million scouring an ocean that seemed determined to hold its secrets. And just when hope had all but faded, when even the most optimistic voices had gone quiet, a retired British engineer named Richard Godfrey stepped forward with a revelation that has left scientists stunned, officials scrambling, and the public questioning everything they thought they knew. Using a forgotten radio network meant for hobbyists, Godfrey may have just found MH370, and he's brought the proof. What he discovered could rewrite the entire story and destroy the official narrative we've all accepted for far too long. So buckle up, because the truth may have been whispering through the air this entire time. March 8, 2014. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 lifts off from Kuala Lumpur at exactly 12:41 a.m., headed to Beijing with 239 people on board. Tourists, business travelers, families. For the first 30 minutes, everything was routine. Smooth ascent, calm radio chatter. Then, at 1:19 a.m., the pilot signs off with air traffic control with an eerily casual, "Good night, Malaysian 370. 2 minutes later, the plane's transponder, the very beacon that makes aircraft visible to civilian radar, goes dark. Just like that, MH370 vanishes from civilian view. But here's the first twist. It didn't vanish. Not yet. Malaysian military radar picks up a strange, unresponsive blip making a sharp, deliberate U-turn back across the Malay Peninsula. It flies west over the Andaman Sea before fading completely off the radar at 2:22 a.m. No distress call, no trace, just a ghost jet flying silently into darkness. While the world searched radar screens and news headlines, MH370 was still whispering, not to humans, but to space. For 6 hours after its transponder shut off, the plane's satellite data unit kept pinging Inmarsat satellites orbiting high above Earth. 7 faint automated handshakes were recorded, not meant to track aircraft, but simple still-here signals. Engineers used 2 key variables, burst timing offset and burst frequency offset, to estimate the plane's location. The result? Enormous arcs stretching across half the planet. One route north through Asia, one south into the desolate Indian Ocean. The northern path was ruled out quickly. No radar saw a Boeing 777 sneaking across China or Kazakhstan, so the world focused south. Those satellite pings gave us the now infamous 7th arc, the line where MH370 was believed to have run out of fuel and plunged into the ocean. But after years of searching along that arc, sonar scans, deep-sea robots, millions of dollars, nothing. It was as if the plane had vanished into a black hole. With no black box, no wreckage, and no distress calls, officials needed a narrative. And what they offered was simple. Too simple. According to the official story, Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah hijacked his own plane, disabled communication systems, turned around, depressurized the cabin to render everyone unconscious, and flew the aircraft south until it ran out of fuel. A ghost flight. But when investigators began to look closely, the evidence didn't add up. The final satellite data showed the plane descending not gently, but sharply, at 15,000 feet per minute. That's not a glide. That's a nosedive. Debris that eventually washed ashore, a flaperon in Réunion, panels in Mozambique, showed signs of violent, high-energy impact, not a soft water landing. And if the official search model was so precise, why did it turn up nothing? The assumptions behind the 7th arc theory were riddled with flaws. And in that vacuum of answers, a new voice began to rise. One that wasn't chasing satellite pings, but something far stranger. Richard Godfrey wasn't a government official. He wasn't even an active engineer. But from his study in Britain, this aerospace veteran began exploring a forgotten tool, the Weak Signal Propagation Reporter, or WSPR. It's a global network used by amateur radio enthusiasts, sending out whisper-quiet signals that travel across the planet. These signals are so faint, just 1 watt of power, but they bounce off the atmosphere and record every tiny disturbance in a massive online database. Godfrey realized something extraordinary. If a massive Boeing 777 flew through these signals, it would leave a tiny fingerprint, a subtle distortion in radio waves. He dove into the WSPR net archive, sifting through billions of data points, and found over 130 anomalies on the night MH370 vanished. When plotted on a map, they traced a trail, a path matching military radar and satellite arcs, and then pointed to a very specific set of coordinates: 29.128 degrees south, 99.934 degrees east. A location never searched. A location backed not by guesses, but by hard radio evidence. And for the first time in a decade, the trail wasn't cold. The location Godfrey identified, 29.128 degrees south, 99.934 degrees east, sits in one of the most remote, unforgiving parts of the southern Indian Ocean, far southwest of Perth, Australia. What's chilling isn't just how specific it is, but how consistently that spot fits with all other known data: satellite pings, debris drift models, and now WSPR signal anomalies. In fact, when Godfrey overlaid his findings onto the original Inmarsat arcs, the match was stunning, like puzzle pieces finally snapping together. Yet despite the clarity, the silence was deafening. Governments who once spent hundreds of millions in a desperate search had no comment. Aviation authorities declined to endorse the findings. Why? Because if Godfrey is right, then the original search zone, the one designed by experts, was catastrophically wrong. And that means this entire decade of mystery might have been avoidable. The aircraft wasn't lost, it was ignored. Or worse, it was deliberately left alone. Godfrey's reconstruction of MH370's final flight path is unlike anything seen before. Not only does it include location data from WSPR, but it integrates altitude shifts, possible autopilot behavior, and even course corrections in real time. This wasn't a straight shot into the ocean. This was a winding, shifting journey, one that suggests an active pilot making deliberate choices. The flight first turns northwest over Penang, then south along Sumatra's coast, flying low, perhaps to avoid radar detection. Then a curious sequence of turns, zigzags over the Indian Ocean, timed at intervals, as though the aircraft were testing for coverage or making a final statement. The reconstructed route ends precisely at Godfrey's coordinates, not with a curve, but with a near vertical descent. Not a crash due to fuel starvation, a dive, controlled, committed, chilling. This wasn't the path of a lost plane. It was the path of someone ensuring it was never found. In the original investigation, authorities recovered a flight simulator from the home of Captain Zahari. Within it were routes plotted toward the southern Indian Ocean, an unsettling echo of the plane's real-life fate. But the data was vague, incomplete, and heavily redacted in public releases. Officials insisted the simulator data didn't prove intent, that the captain might have simply been exploring scenarios. But Godfrey's route, painstakingly reconstructed from radio wave distortions, mirrored those simulator patterns, almost down to the minute. Turns, altitude drops, fuel usage, all aligning with Zahari's virtual simulations. Coincidence? Unlikely. As new analysts examined the overlaps, the possibility of premeditation grew stronger. What if this wasn't a rogue event or system failure? What if the pilot had rehearsed it? What if every turn that night wasn't improvised, but planned? With mounting pressure, Ocean Infinity, one of the only companies capable of exploring such remote seabeds, announced its willingness to launch a new search. This time, their target: Godfrey's coordinates. Equipped with next-generation AUVs capable of mapping the ocean floor in stunning detail, they are preparing to scan the very trench no one dared look before. But it's not just a technical mission, it's a political one. A renewed search, sparked by a retired engineer and a network of amateur radio signals, would be an international embarrassment for aviation authorities. It would confirm that a citizen scientist, alone in his study, solved what entire nations could not. Or worse, what they may have chosen not to solve. For the families, it would finally offer a path to closure. For the world, it would confirm a terrifying truth. The wreckage of MH370 isn't just real, it's reachable. For over 10 years, we've been told that MH370 vanished into the deep. that the ocean swallowed it, that the data wasn't good enough, that we did all we could. But now we know that wasn't true, because one man, armed with nothing but mathematics, radio waves, and relentless determination, uncovered what billions in satellites, warships, and political commissions could not. Richard Godfrey didn't just guess where MH370 was, he calculated it. He traced its movements using the very air it passed through. He followed the whispers in the atmosphere, the invisible fingerprints the plane left behind, and he built a map, not of speculation, but of proof. And that proof points to something far more disturbing than a crash. It points to a flight path rehearsed in a simulator, a descent that looks more like intention than accident, a location that fits every piece of data we ever had, yet was never searched. This isn't just a discovery, this is a reckoning. If MH370 is found where Godfrey says it is, then the world will have to confront what it really lost in 2014. Not just a plane, not just 239 lives, but trust in institutions, in truth, in the idea that when something this massive happens, someone will be held accountable. Because maybe the scariest part isn't that we couldn't find it. Maybe the scariest part is that we didn't want to.